If you race MultiGP, then you're going to want to watch today's video, because I'm sitting down with somebody who knows a thing or two about racing, Johnny5. Hey, John, how are you?
Great.
I'm sitting down with John to go over all of the tracks that could be the 2023 Global Qualifier.
Now, the qualifier is the one track that decides the ranking throughout the world, so you can compare against every other drone racer out there. Now, because of that, this is going to be the most flown and grinded track of the entire year. So making a decision on which track everyone flies is up to the entire drone racing community. There are 8 tracks that have been selected, and we'll be voting on which one is going to be the track for this year. Now's your chance to speak with your vote, and your favorite just might be chosen.
I am Ivan Yefimov, and Joshua Bardwell locked me in his channel. I do a professional drone racing track bitching. A couple of days ago I made a long video where I fly through all 8 MultiGP courses in simulator and talk through them. So check that out, but here's a quick summary of track design nuances I pay attention to. So first of all, I think for official global qualifier track design, we should try to avoid so-called 5-degree gates or knife edge gates. And there are many variations of gates like this, but all of them are high-speed forward progression gates that you hit at a weird angle if you are trying to achieve the fastest line. And the problem with them is pretty obvious. They're pushing you to go very fast through a very tight gap, dramatically increasing the chances of crashing. Which is totally fine for simulator or for personal practice, but I think it's not very good for global qualifier or other official courses. Because a bunch of people will be crashing into these gates trying to go as tight as possible, breaking their motors, gear, and eventually they'll break this gate. Another thing I pay attention to is the hurdle. It's a nice element, but if you decide to use it, make sure that it actually changes the line. On some of the courses, the hurdle is there, but if you remove it, it doesn't change anything. And then why would you even spend time setting it up in real life? For the track flow, I think it's nice to avoid incompleted elements. And this is a matter of how you design entrance and exit from the maneuver. This is an example of incompleted split test, and it just doesn't feel as good as completed one. And the same for other elements, for example pole dancer. This completed one feels way better than these 2 incompleted. Global qualifier course has pretty limited resources, only 10 gates, 5 flags and 1 hurdle. So it's nice to have as much fun packed in as possible. For example, if you put 3 gates in a row just to go through, then you wasted 30% of your gates just for the straight line. Or you put 2 gates together that you just go through at the angle, and then you wasted 20% of your gates for a split-second maneuver. Another thing I'm paying attention to is how the elements are connected together, and if we have some dummy fillers. For example, this standalone orbit, nothing 50 feet before and nothing 50 feet after. That was fine in 2018, but I think modern tracks should connect all the elements together in a nice flowy course. The situation is changing a little bit for slow spec quads, but today we're talking about open class full speed racing. Another thing I actually forgot to mention in my previous video is that the position of the start gate is very important. It has to be as far as possible from the rest of the course, because we don't want any false triggering of the timing system. Because if someone going, for example, too wide through the orbit, it can make a false lap. Another aspect is to check if the track is approximately even for the left and right turns. Because if the track has way more right turns than the left turns, then, it doesn't feel very good. The art of track design is way more complicated than 2 minutes video of personal opinion, and it keeps evolving year after year. And the more tracks you design in real life, obviously the better you are, so it's just a matter of stick time.
With that all out of the way, I think it's time to get into the courses. And we're going to go to the MultiGP website. I'll put this link to this webpage down in the video description below, and this is where you can actually log in and go vote once you've decided which of these tracks you think should be the one.
Anyways, enough talking, let's power on the radio, launch Velocitron FPV simulator and start real bitching. Finding all of the 8 tracks is pretty easy. You just type here 2023 and here they are.
But we're going to start with this track from ROFLCopter, and we've got this video showing 2 laps on the track. Let's go ahead and watch that. That's an interesting element. That right angle turn there is interesting. I see. We go over that gate and then come back through it later. That was a little, they're sort of using a gate as a hurdle there, aren't they?
Yes.
That's interesting.
So this one does make a good use of the space. So it's nice and wide. You have some opportunity to be technical in tight turns and some nice punching areas if you like to go fast. I didn't particularly like the L gate. When you're going really fast, you have to like line it up perfectly. Now, those people that are really great at turning on a dime at a quick angle are going to have a little bit of an advantage there. But I think that the it almost felt like they didn't realize they needed to use 10 gates and maybe just threw that last one somewhere. You could have accomplished almost the same turn with just a single gate, but it feels like there's just more fabric to crash into.
So after this flag, you're already sort of flying high. You don't really need a hurdle to keep you up. Maybe it changes your line here just a tiny bit, but you know, we can find a little bit better use of the hurdle. So imagine there is no hurdle, then you can just go around this flag and go back. Same thing as if there is hurdle or there is no hurdle. And there is 5 degree after this hurdle. So I go around this hurdle into 5 degree gate, and then you're doing this orbit.
Let's move on to NMGrower's track.
I did notice that he uses that one hurdle twice, actually, and so it took me a while to decide, like,
oh, I see.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Is that okay? Is that a risk of a midair? I like how it feels to fly it. There's a saying that midair or cross-traffic midairs are just a myth. Everyone complains like, oh, we're going to hit each other doing this. But it's supposedly a myth that rarely happens. Midairs do happen. So I don't know if that's really a concern. It maybe is just a creative way to kind of get a little more mileage on the short size of the latted track.
So this section, I like it a lot. It's like a stitching, like a bunch of technical tight elements. I like it a lot. Then we're moving to the section with it's like a speed section. And honestly, I'm not big fan of this speed section, but really tastes differ. And then we're going to the hurdle. And you can see this is the example of hurdle that actually works. So here this hurdle forces you to go up and then nicely go down in the gate. And then you go above the hurdle once again. And this is even more like challenging to do. So you're like going above the hurdle and like diving down into this gate with pre-turning.
This one was like a really nice flow, and I like that it is sort of forcing you to practice one of the big trends right now. There's a lot of spec racing going on, not in this particular race, but one of the skills to learn is how to pre-turn. So a lot of those like punches that lead into a turn means that if you really want to be tight, you have to learn to almost turn around and face backwards as you're doing the element. That's not something I can do perfectly, but you'll see the top people like anybody on DRL or anybody in the top 40 or 50 will be able to like face backwards so that they're propelling themselves full stick to the new direction. And this one really forces you to do that in a lot of pieces of the track.
Yeah, I like the sort of transition between tight elements like the triple and then leading into long straight stretches where you can really open up the throttle. But then that long straight stretch, you immediately have to 180 to the next element. So there's you really have to be able to manage your speed, and it really brings out both the sort of tight proximity and the full speed control and the pre-turning. Next up, we have a track from Leviathann. Oh, so he is using the double gate.
He's using the double.
This gate right here, that one.
Yep.
I mean, is there really a point? I mean, we're kind of just doing a spiral down. We've just widened the spiral. That's fine, I guess.
Right.
That gate feels a little extraneous.
So this technical section, I do like it because I like technical section, but I think for 4 gates, we could have a little bit more elements packed in here. So for example, instead of coming straight to this gate, we can do something like we go around and then we corkscrew here and then corkscrew here. And then you see it's a little bit more elements already, like a little bit more turns. Maybe like one or more turns packed in here. So it does feel a little bit of incomplete, but it's not bad. It's not bad at all. And this hurdle, yeah, it is a little bit of useless hurdle, because imagine if you remove this hurdle, the line is basically still the same. Because the shortest line, like the line that Minchan would take, probably will be something like this, right? Just better, like this, but better.
This may be the one that I would love to show up on a random weekend for a race and fly this one all day. It would be really fun. The double gate that I mentioned, my biggest problem with it in other years was that some tracks would have like a full speed launch into it. This one though, because of the turn in the opposite direction immediately, it really forces you to slow down, so you wouldn't have as much risk of damage. So I like that if you were going to use a double gate, to me, like this is the nicest way to do it, so that it's just maybe a little bit more setup, but you get that extra verticality in the track without as much risk.
Yeah, I know that for the people who actually have to set up the course, setting up that double gate is kind of a pain. You're probably going to have guy wires, and that's going to add additional complexity and something else to crash into. But man, I like flying those tracks with the vertical gates, the too high gate.
Also, me personally, I am not a big fan of like standalone orbits. See, this is orbit and there is nothing before this orbit and there's almost nothing after this orbit. That's like standalone orbit from 2018 maybe, which is not bad, but I like orbits which are connected with like something else, like a corkscrew or something like this, but it's just my personal preferences.
This one for Levi, I had a 44 and the top time was a 20. So this one is a blazing fast speed. So if people are already getting almost 7-second laps on the first couple of days, I'm almost like, is Minchan going to get 4 seconds? Like, what's going to happen here?
Yeah, this doesn't feel like a super challenging, and I like all of these tracks are challenging for a racer at my skill level. What I mean is, for the people going to GQ, it feels like this is a little bit more of, we've seen this before, and they're going to kind of adapt to it quickly and eat it up.
Yeah, and I was discussing this with another racer, that it's like, should we on purpose not make any single elements that are too difficult, like the dives that you were talking about? Because for a lot of people, this may be their first or second race. And I do encourage anybody that's a freestyler or whatever, if you're going to go to one race a year, make it to this one, because you have so many options to do it and you get that benchmarking out of it that you can use for another year if you decide to race again. So it's like, should we purposely make it not too complex? And I don't know if we should do that, but I do like that if you break it down, each individual maneuver that you're doing should be something that people can go practice alone, even without gates, right? You just get a tree, do that turn, practice it. And if you can put those things together, you can come out to the qualifier and get some laps.
Yeah. You made this point earlier, but I think it's worth reiterating that even if you don't intend to go to the GQ, like, it's really fun to have one track that all the racers in the world are putting on times on leaderboards. And so you can look at the MultiGP leaderboard and fly in real life. You could go on Velocidrone or your favorite simulator. Velocidrone, I think, is the one where most of the big guys are putting up times. And you can compare your times and see, where, am I 300 in the world? Am I 200? It's a really cool thing. All right, let's take a look at Hyper's track. Wow. It's so interesting seeing the different personality of these designers. Like, a lot of the other tracks really pushed the gates out to the edge of the area, right? To make the most use of that 100 by 200 space. But Hyper, it feels like it could be done in an even smaller area. We got this big corner up here with nothing in it. Lots of tight turns and loops and squiggles. Let's see what it looks like to fly it. Okay, so immediately right there, that looks like a real opportunity for cross traffic.
Yeah. This one's fun. It's funny that even though all the elements are kind of towards the center, it feels like it makes a good use of the space because of like you're sort of doubling back. And so the actual length, it'd be curious to know like how much ground each track covers. This one does a pretty good job. I think it's one of the few that uses both the hurdle and the double gate. And like you said, this one is challenging. I think that first turn for people that are not in the top 200, one of the toughest things to learn how to do is to not go full throttle as soon as you see some open space, right? Because then when you need to turn, you're going to just keep going. Momentum's going to carry you way further on the track than you want to go. And so that could be some of that traffic that you're talking about.
And then this section, I think, could have been a little bit more interesting. For example, can be something like this. You go around this flag, split us here, and then you corkscrew here, and then you move to this section. Some people would say, oh, there would be like more mid-airs here, but personally, I don't believe in cross-traffic mid-airs. Like, they do happen sometimes. Talking about cross-traffic mid-airs, not like all kind of mid-airs, but cross-traffic mid-airs, they're way more unlikely, and I don't think we should take them into account while designing the tracks. Well, up to some extent. But this would be, I think, totally fine. You just like go around this, split S, corkscrew, and then you do this section. Like, this actually feels very nice.
Let's take a look at Hakko's. Hakko? Oh, interesting. Little juke there at the beginning. That's okay. Oh. Interesting. Oh, there's another gate as a hurdle. That's going to be my favorite thing this year, is people doing gates as hurdles. I don't know, I haven't seen that before. Is that new, or am I just out of touch?
We do that a lot at our night spot, but mostly just because we want to set up with as few gates as possible. So.
Yeah. Interesting. This is a really interesting track.
This one, it felt like it had the most like crisscrossing around the track. Of course, like that's not a concern because mid-air cross-traffic mid-airs are a myth, but I did notice it do that. Now that one Skygate does remind me a little bit of that 2019 Skygate of Doom because it is a good long full speed punch as you're going up and turning at the same time. And I think that year I did qualifier maybe 3 or 4 times. So that's why you say like you're going to run this track multiple times. Each time you're going to use probably 12 to 15 batteries. And so there are some people that may run it 10 times. They may travel to other cities qualifiers just because they want a lot of chances to get as high on that leaderboard. And I noticed a few times for those Skygates, if the sun is in a certain position when you're flying the track and it's behind that gate, you're now like blindly punching up into the sky. And like, that's where I usually would clip an edge because it just was a little hard to see. That may be my own PTSD from that year, but this one reminds me the most of it. But other than that, really fun. Like if I could do this one indoors, it might be really high on my list.
Like this corkscrew exit feels very nice. It feels finished because it's not just corkscrew and then you go straight. This is like a normal corkscrew from 2018, but this is a nice corkscrew because you're like 180 exit from it, and it, I don't know, for me at least it feels very nice.
Let's take a look at Fastodon. Oh, okay, I like it. Going between 2 elements at altitude, I like. Everybody's going to be full throttle through there, hop over that gate.
Yeah.
Oh, what the hell is this? What is the? Oh, that's very. I don't know why, but I like that. I'm not even sure the hurdle is necessary, but I kind of dig it. That's interesting.
They had a similar element at International Open last year, and it's definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah, I like how you don't come into it at the angle that it feels like you're gonna. You sort of continue rotating around and come in and drop down. And
this is a really fun one. I liked anybody that is a fan of going fast. This is probably going to be your favorite track because there's just lots of straights, lots of speed. But I like at certain parts of the course, they really make it technical for you as well. So it's probably the best mix of both speed and technical elements. Now, one of the gates in the middle is a little bit spicy, and what we would call a spicy gate here in Houston is, or some people might call it a 5 degrees gate. That's a gate where you might be tempted to go straight across and just go into it instead of a curve. Now that curve was flown in this example, but as people grind, they're going to be more tempted to knife edge that to like save a little bit of time.
Yeah. All right. Well, now I've got a boner. We're going to go to Boner FPV, and we're going to take a look at this course. Here we go. Interesting. It feels short. It feels short?
It is short. So that it's not your imagination. This one is probably one of the shorter ones on the thing. Boner is like the famous SimTrack designer, so I think he was like really trying to reel himself in, but he could have really made it a little bit stretchier there. This one is probably one of my favorites. If I was just going to go fly it on a weekend, I would love showing up to have this track and being able to fly it. It has a nice flow. There's a good balance of like left turn, right turn, so that you're not always focused moving one direction or the other. But overall, it's a bit small. Even as my like first few tries, I hit one lap that was 9 seconds. Already. And so my fastest was the fastest on this track of 33 seconds. And at the time, the fastest was 20 seconds. So I'm sure if I looked now, a couple days later, there's probably a few people that might have 17 or 18. So yeah, super fast.
So pay attention to this hurdle. Did you notice how after this gate, we have to go up anyways, because we go above this gate, and above this gate. So this hurdle doesn't really enforce you to do anything. So if you remove this hurdle, it's gonna be exactly the same as if there is hurdle. So maybe could have found a little bit better use for this hurdle somewhere else.
All right, last one is gonna be Ayykayy. Was Ayykayy the person who designed last year's track?
I believe Ayykayy has actually designed the last 2 global qualifier tracks.
Okay. Oh, down, up, hurdle. Lots of up, down, vertical, horizontal. I love these triples. Oh, very nice. Going to the far side of the triple and then back through the center. I dig that. Oh, spiral down, another spiral down, and we do it again. Interesting. Ooh, interesting. Oh, I really like this one.
I do too. I was almost kind of like, well, it's probably time for someone else, and I liked it more than I thought I was going to.
You went into it like, nah, come on.
You could tell he has a lot of experience designing this particular style and size of track, and it shows. It's very fun. Probably one of the better good uses of the space. It is on the faster side, but because of where the gates are, it feels like a very nice, safe setup. A lot of the punching lines are facing inward to the track as opposed to outward, and a lot of those really sort of interesting lines that we don't typically see. And that's what you want, things that are not going to be impossible to do, but something that's going to challenge you to develop a new skill that you can use in the future is really nice. So he kind of accomplishes a lot of those things. And I like that use of the hurdle, that you kind of like have to run alongside it, but it kind of guides your line in a way that you can't take it except just the right motion, or else you could risk hitting it. So that was a creative new use, or kind of a newish style that I hadn't seen too much before.
But this one is really good. It's like all kind of weird angled, works very nicely with the hurdle. And so you're like, it feels very nice. Like I like this a lot. But then this gate is 45-degree gate. It's not full 5-degree gate, but it is a forward progression 45-degree gate. You see it? And this exit from the carousel is also... This is like a classic 5-degree gate exit from carousel. Although you're not going very fast. It's not a really forward progression gate, so it's not a big deal.
One of the things that I wish that they would do next year, first of all, I'm really thankful and appreciative of MultiGP to put on this voting thing so that we can all participate. And it's really just fun to be able to get to fly 8 tracks that are all real-world possible to build, and that you can actually take the dimensions and go out and build them if you want to at the same time. That's been a lot of fun. I do wish for next year, though, that they would make the voting anonymous. We have some of the most famous track designers in the world here. And myself trying to be impartial, like I'm really close, good friends with NMGrower. He's from the Houston crew. I think he's one of the best track designers in the world. Ayykayy is obviously a big track designer. Levi and Hyper are 2 of the most fastest pilots around. I've met all these guys. It's a little difficult to like not take that into consideration. And
yeah, interesting.
Somebody, like one of my buddies in town was like, I didn't even look at him. I just voted for...
I just voted for my friend.
You know, I just voted for my friend, which is,
don't do that, because
would do that.
Because like hundreds of people who are going to GQ and thousands of people around the world, maybe more, are going to have to fly this course. So vote for the one that you think is really the best. I do see the point, though, Jon, that putting them up just as, track 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 without, I mean, would it get out anyway? Would people just say, hey, I'm track 1?
It might, but I can tell you that as I was trying the tracks after this, so I improved all the times on all the tracks after this, got a bit faster on many of them. I took a peek yesterday and today as I was running them, how many people had tried each track. And the more famous track designers sometimes had 2 or 3 times the number of people on the leaderboard as the less famous track designers. So you can already see that people are like, maybe they don't want to try all of them. They're just going to try the famous ones, and then the voting will be kind of skewed that way.
Well, hopefully we can counterbalance that just a little bit by giving some exposure to all the tracks. Let me put you on the spot, because like you said, you've flown all these tracks, you've gotten times, and you have a lot of experience racing, more than me. If you had to rank these, like, I don't know if we want to just do a 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. But if you had to kind of put maybe 3 of them sort of in the top, which would they be?
My 3 personal favorite tracks, and here's the thing, though. I don't consider them as my favorite. They're the ones that I would like to fly multiple times as the qualifier. The one that I would want to fly the most just showing up on a day at the field might be a little bit different from that. So considering all those things, I would put Grower, Ayykayy, and then it's kind of a tie for 3rd place between like Leviathann and Fastodon. I really like those. I wouldn't be too mad if any one of these 8 tracks made it to the thing. And when I was talking to one of my buddies, Grower was saying, you know what? Whoever wins this has to be ready for, because this is the most flown track, it's the most crashed track, and everyone hates it by the end of the year.
Everyone's sick of it, right?
Whoever designs like the IO World Cup track and the Champs track that everybody goes and flies once, everyone's like, oh man, it was amazing. But this is the one that everyone hates by the end of the year. So it's sort of like a thankless duty. So we appreciate all of these guys who are the experienced track designers lending us their talents, because it is such a specialized skill and there's so few. And we really appreciate the newer ones who are trying out for the first time. We hope, even if you don't win, that you'll continue to develop this skill, because it's something that we all appreciate and get to just experience. So if you don't win, don't give up, keep going. You're going to get better year after year. Some of these guys have been designing tracks for almost a decade.
It's way more complicated than it seems. Just put 10 gates down and fly through them. But when you look at the difference between somebody who's very experienced, you just look at it and you go, "Oh, that's a good track." Now's the time for you to go vote. Or, well, if you're not ready to vote yet, I guess you could go race some of these tracks on Velocidrone. And when you're ready, go ahead, log into the MultiGP website and vote. When will the winner be picked? Do we know?
I believe it was March 13th or 17th. They're going to stop the voting, pick the winner, and
16.
in the next weeks after that, actual GQ flying will start.
Exciting. Well, Jon, thank you so much for lending this perspective. Jon, I'm going to link your channel down in the video description below, of course, and people can go check out the kind of content you're making. What video should they go watch? I'll put a card on screen to it.
So, of course, the short film that I did of Minchan at Costa Rica is probably the most viewed video on the channel. I just got back from Drone Racing League championships in Miami, and I'm hoping to make that style short film type content and really showcase drone racing in more of a fly to survive Formula One style. I got interviewed with all 12 pilots, so that series is going to start in the next few weeks.
Exciting. All right, I'll put some cards on screen to your content. People can go check it out. But that's going to do it for now. Thanks so much, guys. Bye, everybody.